Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is to look at, explore, and discuss a little bit more in depth in terms of a trait of a malignant narcissist, that being just sort of an aspect of having sort of delusions of grandeur, just sort of being delusional or entitled. When we talk about that quality of, someone who is delusional, a lot of people are thinking more on the schizophrenic level where they're literally, in a fantasy world. They are not having 2 feet in reality. It's a dysfunction. It's a mental, it's an abnormality. It is a disorder that needs to be treated with medication, therapy, and sometimes hospitalization. People can go into psychotic or psychotic, episodes where they have delusions of grandeur. Just things that are very fantastical, magical, something that they have really made up. Something, they might have speech that does not make any sense, very, idiosyncratic. But, if you talk about, someone who is a malignant narcissist, they are hardcore. They are in it to win it. They are going to settle the score and they're going to win. They're going to come out on top, whatever the cost. And even if they have to amp up their narcissist machine, they will go all out. Oftentimes, delusions meaning just sort of making, these sort of fantastical desires and sort of refuting reality, denying the truth of what is required to get there. It's like a client that I spoke with yesterday where her husband is just always, instead of promising the funds, and they're talking about their credit cards, he is, just sort of, this deal is going to go through, this deal is going to go through, and just sort of delusional. She's been married to him for 22 years, and she's been on a roller coaster, not only emotionally, but financially, because his delusions take a lot of money. They take a lot of sacrifice, meaning she has to, earn all the income in that household, yet she's being told these pathological lies, which are founded in delusion, which means they're not accurate. They are not taking place. They are not reliable. They are putting the cart in front of the horse. So if you see a horse-drawn carriage, you've got the horse first and then the carriage following. If you are delusional, you're sort of putting the cart ahead of the horse. You've got things in a disorder. They are out of order. They are in the right spot. It's not hooked up properly. This buddy ain't gonna flow. This ain't going down Main Street. This ain't going down Cherry Street. This ain't going down any street. It is not going to function. It's going to come to a screeching halt. It's going to have to be unhooked, put hooked in the right place if it's going to go anywhere at all. So your relationship might not really be going anywhere, or you have these fits and starts, or what's even more destructive is when the malignant narcissist, because of their sort of delusional promises and false promises that they believe in, and sure, everybody makes mistakes, everybody makes miscalculations. Look at the economy globally today. How many people are involuntarily unemployed or furloughed because of this pandemic? So here you go. So you have to be pragmatic and realistic and know exactly what you're dealing with and stay on the solution. When you're dealing with a malignant narcissist who is delusional, they're not going to see the facts. They're going to give you a lot of pushback. They're going to give you a lot of resistance. This is going to happen. I am going to, create this CD. I am going to get this contract. And then their finances are based on this, but it's not sustainable because there's delusional, just sort of fantastical, or just sort of, maybe some people call it wishful thinking. But it becomes even more dramatic and even more damaging and chaotic when you're you have bills with this person, you have a mortgage with this person, you have children with this person. And it becomes like the bottom just keeps dropping. You know, you think you have a floor, you think you have something, and it just falls out. The bottom falls out from beneath you. And usually the other people then surrounding the narcissist are the ones to correct things, to put things in reality order. And as we're saying with the video yesterday, is that oftentimes the narcissist, because of their sort of tendency towards this delusional or grandiosity thinking, and then they're loving the superficial compliments, the sort of superficial, you know, fake facade, when the situation does not require that. The mandate or directive does not require for you to be fake. It requires for you to be real. If you are in the state of the world right now, we are all going something that we will all, each and every one of us, remember for the rest of our lives. This is a shared memory. This is so important, and I hope you're with me on this, or can listen and perhaps, you know, hear me out. But this is one global shared experience that we will all possess. This is going to be built into the fabric of the collective conscious, which means out in the airwaves right now, as well as the collective unconscious, what Carl Jung refers to as the collective unconscious, just sort of, you know, this really sort of vast, just sort of unknown. It's the deeper part of the mind, which really is the seat of healing when you work through these, because healing really needs to take place. When we talk about the damage, the trauma people have experienced, you have to heal at the subconscious level. You have to heal at the unconscious, subconscious level, which means you have to work at that autonomic suggestion, what Napoleon Hill calls when you have rehearsed and memorized something and you are living by a definiteness of purpose. I love that concept. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, he talks about how important it is to have a definiteness of purpose. This is a book from the 1920s. You can still get it. I would recommend you get it and read it if you're all interested in this. You know, he talks about the Mastermind. These are tenets and principles that a lot of people, business people, organizations have their mission statement. You know, it's just sort of a foundational, seminal work. And Think and Grow Rich, he talks about, autonomic processes, which just means you then are, once you've learned these lessons that he talks about, which we sort of endorse and work with in a similar fashion here for your healing, which pertains to everybody, and it's going to help you on your own experience. This is going to be a shared experience globally. It is something we will all be able to share in common. This happened to me. This happened to my neighbor. This happened to my favorite restaurant. This happened to my favorite shopping store. This happened to my favorite neighborhood hangout. I mean, we are going to see this all unravel, and it's going to change the landscape for a lot of us in the next upcoming weeks. I don't know. I'm not a politician. I'm not a news person, but I do, exist, and I do, watch the news and connect to these tenets and principles. So it will be interesting to see what takes place in the next 3 to 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, so it's just like, let's keep on this. But realize that, if you are suffering or, you're trying to sort of get your life right, get your thought pattern right, you can really experience a lot of sort of disordered thought patterns after you've been in a relationship with a narcissist for a long period of time. If this has been your friend, this has been your high school sweetheart, this is your neighborhood pal, these are your formidable relationships. These are, your core people that have really had impact on you. And if they, or your family, or at your workplace, or your school, or your community, wherever it is, you have encountered this, it is going to impact your thought process. So you want to realize that, this sort of delusion, which means, they're just not sort of living in the common sense or practical. And then the problem with a relationship with a narcissist is that living in the real, living in the practical, living in the content, living in the I'm okay with myself, and allowing that be state and your I am to coexist with others and not have it be threatened, or your growth be threatened, or your opinions be threatened. In other words, someone who can tolerate having people's different feelings and being able to listen and be okay and not feel that they have to be jumpy and, just, refute them and push them back like a delusional narcissist. Oftentimes people don't feel they have the right to their own feelings, the right to their own voice. And so the problem with those people who are delusional is oftentimes they are very discontented with the real. They are not stimulated or excited by the practical. They want to live in the delusion. It's more of a buzz for them. I really think it's like a narcissist addiction. It's their pathology. It's their disordered thought that they will stand by and be very rigid and resistive to change. They're not going to give up. To them, it's their dream, and they have the right to that. I mean, let's just face it. If that's who they are, that's who they are. Let them go. Let them be who they are. You don't have to live their life for them. You don't have to think a narcissist's thoughts for them. You don't even have to correct their thoughts. You don't have to do all this that you feel that you might have been responsible for, or that you might feel that you had to be led to. You don't have to be the savior. Check that out with yourself. To what degree have you been programmed and conditioned to be the rescuer? To what degree have you been programmed and conditioned to be the life saver, the life buoy? Throw out the lifeline. Save those who are drowning emotionally. Maybe you have had to be the one who needed to be bailed out emotionally. You might have needed a lifeline. You might have needed a life raft. You might have needed, one of those life-saving, flotation devices that someone got you out of that stream, pulled you over to dry land, and been like, let's get your feet on the ground, buddy. Let's get out of there. You were being carried away by the delusion of the narcissist. And so, even if the narcissist did not listen to you, why don't you listen to you? Why don't you champion yourself? Why don't you embrace and hug yourself and realize that, oftentimes the situations and relationships with narcissists have to, a lot of them exist on that delusional level. Sure, it might be funny, it might be silly, it might be entertaining or enjoyable for some time. But you got to get real. You got to be able to walk the walk. You got to be able to talk the talk. And you got to be able to be the be. You got to do the do. You got to be real and authentic. I mean, there's no running away and hiding. And then why would you want to? Why would you need to run away from your I am? Why can't you be strong and secure in your foundation, your history? If someone has denied that of you or not educated you of your history, your legacy, your lineage, your proper identity that you should have some degree of ownership and pride of. When we're talking about psychological development and social psychology, you need to understand there's sort of, and people who study anthropology, I think, are very well versed at this, but, societal development, just sort of the big picture on community development and what is required for things to be hunky-dory. And realize that, this experience with a narcissist, oftentimes it's the foundation. If it's one of delusion, it's gonna have a sinkhole. It's going to have a emotional black hole. It's going to feel like, emotional vampirism. They are going to be, standing by that sort of living their dream, if you will, but it can be very delusional, meaning, they're saying and promising, you should do this, I should be this, and they haven't done steps A, B, and C to earn and be able to set up the foundation, for E, F, G, H, and I. I mean, they just, if it's delusional, they're going to oftentimes give a lot of kickback and a lot of just sort of negative talk and negation, meaning, just sort of tell you that you have a problem if you are not living the delusion, if you're not where they are, quote unquote, if you don't have this superiority complex that they pump up, that they fluff up themselves. What was that song about the guy who's puffing up his chest? Back, about maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, remember, maybe it was 3 years ago, that popular pop rock song, about the guy who, when he saw the girl, he's puffing up his chest. I mean, that's sort of this, they're kind of like that big delusional, it's what we call big hat, no cattle. It's like a cowboy that's, chewing the grass, got the cowboy boots, he's kicking up the dust and saying, chewing the grass and tipping his hat. He's got the big 10-gallon hat, but he ain't got no cattle. It's, big hat, no cattle. They're living in a delusion. Where are your cattle? Where are your real things? Where is the horse before the cart? How can you get an ox and cart, or whatever it's called, and plow the fields if you don't have any ox? You gotta do, you gotta be real, you gotta come clean, you gotta stop thinking it's scary to come clean. But if you've been exposed and influenced by a malignant narcissist, then you might feel that reality is not good enough. Just who you are is not good enough. How you live is not good enough. They're always looking to sort of, I don't want to use the term rape and pillage, but it's just sort of, it's a mentality. They just sort of want to use, the resources that you provide and just sort of walk away and just being like waving and just being like, nice to know you, after they just took, and left you empty-handed. And people feel robbed blind. And it's very discontenting because their regular I am has been sort of criticized, demeaned, told wasn't enough, it's not exciting enough, whatever it is, it's just not on their delusional level. So it's not an energetic match. If someone is just sort of in that delusion, then the reality, the real fabric ain't gonna match. It ain't gonna look good. You guys are, it's like being woven from a different cloth. You are like the silk and they are like the steel. It doesn't look very good if you have, these combinations. They will just sort of, the steel will rip and destroy. It will snag. It'll tear it apart. It'll leave you in tatters, and battered. So the real important thing, I think, the takeaway is to realize that your reality is good enough, and embrace it. If you have not embraced it, if you have not been content because of this, because you were not an energetic match to their delusion, then just, it's okay to let that go and just say, I, am not and was not an energetic match to delusion. I prefer reality. I prefer the authentic. I prefer the raw. I prefer what is real, and then real results. A lot of these people, they might, have been on sort of these half relationships, especially with a psychopath. It's not a relationship. It's just sort of like an encounter. It's just sort of like you've met a person that is just not really there. It's very strange. They're not really there in a humanity sense. So it'll be very interesting to see how those types of folks manage and handle this sort of pandemic, and then how the collective unconscious just sort of fits this into the humanity narrative that we are a part of. So, give yourself some kudos, give yourself some credit for hanging in there and dealing with everything. Give yourself a shot of courage, give yourself a slap on the back, give yourself a recovery date and a recovery gift. Get going with it, and realize that it's okay to be as you are, at the level your I am, and in that foundation. and knowing what is real to you is enough. What is authentic, what makes sense, what you take pride in, what you embrace, what works for you is good enough. Enhance it. If you want to take it to the next level for you, take it to the next level for you. But don't take your life to the next level for the delusion or try to meet the delusion of a narcissist. Once again, you are working on hollow pretense. Your mission, you don't have definiteness of purpose that is, solid. You have to have that internal locus of control, because if you allow it to be that external, it's going to oftentimes disappoint you. You're going to be upset that you were trying to work so hard for something that never came through. It never realized for you. It never manifest. You want to have results. You want to have relationships that are, infused with content, that are infused with interaction, with a two-way street and expression, creativity if you want to go there, feeling that you have been able to have a cathartic release, and in relationships with people that involve eye contact, that involve reality, that have facts, that have experiences. So realize that is okay, to be you, to have that level of content and then that reality, and understand that oftentimes can be a source of suffering for those people who are involved, just because they're not an energetic match to the delusion. So be okay with that for yourself today. You can do it. You got this. I think you know this. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out and have a beautiful day.